Hi everyone and welcome to Hidden Roles. I'm Rochelle and today's game is Century Eastern Wonders, where we take on the role of not only spice merchants but explorers and builders. Designed by Emerson Matsuuchi and published by Plan B Games, the game has the recurring theme of being in the spice trade business. Unlike Century Spice Road, where you are a spice merchant in the desert, in Century Eastern Wonders, you're actually, as I mentioned before, kind of like a spice pioneer in the high seas, where you're not only exploring different areas, but you're establishing markets by building outposts, harvesting spices, and then, of course, trading spices as well. So what's unique about the game is that it can be played on its own as a standalone game, or it can be played as the companion game to Century Spice Road. In the box, it actually comes with instructions for both. So you have the standalone game of Century Eastern Wonders, but then you have the companion game with Century Spice Road, where it's Century from Sand to Sea, so you'll be playing the games together. For this specific preview and review, we are doing it as its own standalone game. That's just because that's how we played it. And then also, if you don't have Century Spice Road and have only gotten Century Eastern Wonders, you can play it on your own rather than having to play as a companion piece. So in Century Eastern Wonders, the game can be played up to 4 players. Each player will be representing a different nation depicted in these colors. So when you start the game, you'll get your boat of your respective color, your player board, and then also the 20 outposts of that specific color as well. For the first game, they do recommend using the map that's listed in the instruction manual. And then once you're more familiar with the game or any game after that, you can actually create your own unique map. So every game you play afterwards, it would be good because then you have a different map to play with every single time. So once you've set that up, then in reverse turn order, each player will pick their starting spices. So there's 4 options that you can choose from. And then each player will select a market tile that they can start off their turn on. So then once your setup is complete, then it's time to begin the game. So the game is played in a series of rounds with each person taking their turn. As I mentioned previously, everybody will be starting on different market tiles. So this player will be here, this player will be here, and this player will be here. And then you also start off with your own starting spices. So let's say I just grab these and I would put it in my cargo hold right here, and there's a spot for each one. So on a player's turn, they first have the option of doing a movement action. So they don't have to do this. They can stay where they're at if they like that spot, or they can move to, 1 space to an adjacent tile for free. So I can move to any one of these 4 spots for free. And any subsequent move after that, I do have to pay 1 cube per move. So let's say, for example, I wanted to move to this specific tile. This first movement would be free. And then if I want to go to this tile, then I would have to take a cube from my supply and place it on the tile that I just left to pay for that, to be able to move to this spot. But if I land on a tile with another player, I do have to pay that player a cube from my supply. So let's say if I didn't have these and I land on the same tile with this person, I can't pay that person, so I wouldn't be able to actually end my turn there. I would have to end my turn at a different tile that's free and doesn't have a person there. So if I landed on this tile, then I would have to give this player 1 cube from my supply and they would put it in their supply. If you don't have the resources to pay that person, then you're not able to land on that tile or end your movement turn on that tile. You'd have to end it somewhere else that's free. But then if I land on a tile that already had a cube on there, so let's say, for example, this cube just happened to be on there when I landed on it, I can actually take that cube. So it's good to kind of strategize what you'll be playing, where you're going to be moving, and also where you're going to be landing, since that can affect you, especially if you don't have any resources left available. Once your movement action is completed, then you have the option of 3 different actions that you can perform. The first one is the market action. So during the market action, if you land on a market tile, you first have the option to build an outpost. So to build an outpost, if you are the first one there, it is free. So it's always good to kind of be the first one to build an outpost on an empty tile. Similar to the movement action, if there is already an outpost there, so let's say if this person had already built their outpost before I built mine, I would have to pay 1 cube per outpost that already exists on that tile. So for this example, I would have to pay 1 cube to the supply for this outpost. So the most you'll ever pay is 3 cubes in a 4-player game, but it's always good to kind of be one of the first people there because obviously it's cheaper and you're not wasting your resources paying for the extra outposts that already exist on that tile. So once I've built my outpost, then I can actually take that market action of that tile. So for this specific tile, this outpost will let me trade in 1 green cube for 2 red cubes. So that's also what the market action does. Another thing to be aware of with the market action is the bonus tiles. Every time you build an outpost, you do have to pick the farthest left one of each row. So if I wanted to build this row right here, I can't just pick up an outpost from the middle. I'd have to build the leftmost one. But if I wanted to build an outpost from this row, I would pick this one. Once you've built enough outposts that you have an empty column, let's say, for example, I've built these 3 outposts already and I have this first column empty, I can actually select a bonus tile of these 4 options. So the bonus tiles can vary from different things that kind of help you out through the game. One of them is an additional free action movement. So instead of moving 1 tile for free, you can actually move 2 tiles for free. So that kind of helps you explore a little bit more. Or you can actually just get the tile for straight up victory points. This one is just straight 6 victory points. So that's good. There's 1 tile for each player. So each player will kind of go their own different paths and pick specific ones based on their own strategy. The second action is the port action. So on the port action, if you land on a port tile, then it's pretty simple. All you have to do is just exchange the cubes in your supply with the cubes listed on the tile, and then you get those victory points. So for this one, I would need 1 green cube, 2 browns, and then 2 reds. And then I can collect these tiles and then give away my cubes in my supply. Okay. Once you've collected that tile, then that port is closed. So you'll place a closed marker on that port. It'll get refilled again once another port has been fulfilled, and then that marker will move over to that port instead. It just kind of helps prevent people from squatting on that tile in case they have an excess amount of resources and just want to fulfill another tile really quickly. The third action that you have is the harvest action. This one is pretty straightforward. Any tile that you land on, you can just do the harvest action, and that's pretty much you just get 2 yellow cubes. Pretty simple. So each player will continue taking their turns for how many series of rounds there is until a player actually has their 4th victory tile. Once a player has collected their 4th victory tile, then the round ends until everybody has had their equal number of turns. And then you count how many victory points you have. So for victory points, you get points for the victory tiles that you've collected, for any bonus tiles that you have. And also if you look on your player board, the last 4 columns all have different varying degrees of points. So once you've counted all of those up, whoever has the most victory points wins. So now I'll hand it over to Brent, who will give you the pros and cons of the game.
So pro number 1 for me is being a part of the Century Trilogy. Century Eastern Wonders is the 2nd game in the Century Trilogy, the first one being Century Spice Road. I was a huge fan of Century Spice Road, so I had high hopes for this game. I think they did a good job of keeping the Spice Trader theme going from the first to second game, and it really did feel like a continuation of the story. I also thought it was brilliant for them to create a game that could be played standalone, but also combined with the first game. If you combine both games, it is known as From Sand to Sea. They definitely get tons of credit for pulling this off. I thought it was a brilliant idea that you're able to combine both games together. I've never seen that done before. So the first con I did want to mention was this game felt a little bit too much like Century Spice Road. I feel like I'm doing the same thing, just slightly differently than Century Spice Road. So I'm still collecting spice cubes, I'm still upgrading spice cubes, and I'm still turning them in to public objectives in order to score points. Sure, there's a couple of new things added to the game, like moving your boat around the map, which at times felt a little tedious. Rather than just being able to collect a victory point tile, you actually have to physically be there and have your boat there in order to pick it up. While I get having that in the game allows for tense moments of rival players like racing to a specific spot because they have the exact cubes to turn in, I'm not sure how much value that really added to the game. Probably would have liked it better in the game if they had different mechanisms than the first game, so that I felt that they kind of mixed together better. The second pro that I want to mention was that this is a simple game, but yet very strategic. The game is very deep, and even at the surface of it, while the moves that you take are very simple, there's a lot of thinking involved in it. I was a big fan of Century Spice Road, which had the same aspects to it. This adds a couple new features which make the game just a little bit more interesting. You always want to be the first boat on a map tile to build an outpost. Any subsequent outpost built on a spot, you have to pay an extra cube to place it there. I definitely think it's interesting that you could see what everyone is planning to do. I remember in Century Spice Road, everyone had cards where you weren't sure what card they were going to play next, which definitely makes things interesting, knowing everything, so you could race them to a specific spot, knowing that they were planning to go there and get a victory tile. So the second con I did want to mention was this game takes longer than it should. Again, I have to compare this to Spice Road as they're so closely related. One of the main reasons why I like Century Spice Road was the fact that a player's turn was super fast and you could get through the game rather quickly. Here, there's more to take into account like boat movements and managing your outpost track. While I do like the new features in this game, I think it ruins the overall gameplay speed that I really appreciated with the first game. Players on their turn have to make decisions like, should I move my boat here? Or should I go this way? But if I go this way, I have to drop X number of cubes. Wait, which cube should I be dropping? I felt in Century Spice Road, a turn could literally take a couple seconds, but in this game, people are definitely prone to analysis paralysis. The third pro that I wanted to mention was that there's a lot of replayability in this game. I thought it was a brilliant idea for them to do hexes instead of an actual game board. You could actually make custom maps and different configurations with these hexes, so have a different experience every single time. One cool feature about the map that I really like is once you pick up a victory tile, it gets replaced with this X marker, which means that the next player has to pick up a victory tile from another spot on the board. So that promotes moving across the map and actually utilizing it, which I definitely think increases the replayability with the custom maps. Overall, Century Eastern Wonders was a fun game to play. While I was critical of it being similar to Century Spice Road, I still found it to be a quality game.